So both of you, Mr. Klaus Teuber, Benjamin, we are very glad to have you as a guest author at DAU Festival in Barcelona. Welcome. This is a very special edition, in fact, because of the pandemics. So we have to do as we can, and will be telemagic, right? DAU in Catalan means dice. And my first question would be that: do you like dice in games?
Yeah. I like die in the game because I think it's a sort of coincidence which makes a game or it gives a game more life. Yeah, because in real life you don't know what will happen tomorrow, and you cannot plan all the things. And so in a game with a die, you have to think about each new situation, and that makes it so so interesting. Benny?
I'm not surprised about the answer at all. It's the same here. We both say we like a little bit of luck in a game. So the winner can say, I won because I'm a strategic mastermind, and then the loser can say, no, it's all been bad luck. You won because of the dice. But then having dice is great because like if you think of Catan or other games, the dice determines which resources you get, and then you still have to think about what you do with the resources. So you still have to show that you have skills and can think about it. And the decisions you take, maybe a little bit luck was there at the beginning, but then later it depends on what you do with it. So it's something we like.
Okay, but
I think it should not be too strong, the part of the die, and you should have a little bit control over it. Yes, and it should not be like a roulette. Yeah.
But speaking about Catan, number 7 is very important in dice in Catan because it means the appearance of the robber. But number 7 is the most frequent appearance in it because you have once of 6 times you will add 7. Is that a balancing mechanism? Was it thought about balancing the game?
Yes, I think the rubber was necessary to have a balance in the game, because without a rubber you would collect a mass of cards in your hand because there is no danger, and at a time you have 3 or 4 cards of one sort. That's no problem. But with a rubber, you must trade, yeah, because this danger of the rubber is in your neck. So the rubber is very important, and to tie the rubber with the 7. The reason for that was it's the 7 is a special number in this row from 2 to 12, because it is in the mid, and 6 and 8 are similar in the probability, but 7 is the only one number who has the chance of 6 to be rolled. So this was the reason.
Now, a question about language. I appreciate you can do this in English. I'm so sorry I can't speak German. But in English, the verb to play appeals to games, but to musical instruments, you play guitar, appeals to theater, playwriters write drama, they are plays, fair play and all that. In our language, in Catalan, we have a linguistic little trouble because jugar, which means to play, means playing, but means gambling as well. The both different things, but with the same word. How about spiel in your language, in German? Do you have any difference in German for those diverse activities?
Yeah, you can. Zocken is a word you would say. It's a little bit. How do you say? Not street language, but it's like not the proper word. You can say I go to the casino to play. So like spielen also accounts in German for that. But then if you want to express gambling in particular and you want people to understand, you can say another word, as for example, zocken.
Oh, I see. So you don't have the confusion between both.
You can have it if you want to confuse someone. You can, because both words are correct. If you want to express yourself properly, you can. You have a variety of words to use.
That's great. Okay, let's talk about some books and literature as well. I'm a writer, I love literature, but I was very, very fond of reading that Mr. Teuber's first game, Barbarossa, in 1988, was inspired not by a book, but by 3 books, a fantasy trilogy by Patricia McKillip. Could you explain how was that coming from literature and thinking about create a game?
Yeah, it was how was it called? Conan the Barbarian, who brought me to Patricia McKillip, because in my newspaper I read a very bad critic about the movie Conan. And,
bad critic.
The author described or proposed other books, fantasy books, that he wrote. They are much better, and so I come to Patricia McKillip's Riddle Master, and I read it with enthusiasm. And when I end the book, I was very sad. Yeah, you know this moment, wonderful story, now it's finished, and what happens in the book followed me a time along and was in my head, and at this time I played very I like it very much to play, and so I had an idea, why not bringing the central elements of this book into a game and to experience the story of the book or a part of the story in the book in a game. And so I could experience the story again. This was my first game, indeed. I developed because I read the book. Or 3 books, because it's a trilogy.
A trilogy. Did you read that novel, Benjamin, as well?
Actually, I never did. No. I should.
You should. You should do.
And have you ever met Mrs. Patricia, or
no?
Does she know that she inspired you?
I don't know. Perhaps he likes to play, and an article about Catan, maybe.
Maybe you have, because I read about you said I have been just searching her. So and she's 72 now, but she's American, but she grew up in Oregon, Great Britain, and Germany as well. So maybe she can read or speak German as well. Okay. In fact, because I don't know, I have read about Barbarossa, about mold clay sculptures, but which was the element coming from fiction, from fantasy novel that you took into the game? These sculptures or figures?
No, it's in the book we have wizards, and they have fights with the opponent wizards, and they fight with riddles. Yeah, you have to solve my riddle, and I'm yours, and who's the better one? Yeah, and this was the element in the middle of this book, and this is then was in the Riddle Master. I called the game in the beginning Riddle Master, not Barbarossa.
That's it. Well, it was, in fact, you were working as a dentist at the time, so it was your first game, but it was a hit. It won the Spiel des Jahres award for the first time. I think you have 4 Spiels, if I'm not, you 4 times afterwards with other. But how long did it take for you to build your first game?
Yeah, it's when I started to develop games, it was I hadn't in my mind to become a game inventor or something like that. It was only fun to bring the story of the book into a game. And so I started in the early 80s, and it was published 1988.
Wow.
Between that, I only played it and played it with friends and with my family, and I only have the fun to do that. Yeah, it was a special kind of my own world to develop games, which helps me to stay successful in my profession. And in this time between the first 80s and 1988, I to develop other games. They became later then also Game of the Years, like Alle Verpflichtet or Drunter und Drüber. Yeah. But also, you can say, took 6 years without forcing it to bring it to companies, because I didn't know that games has authors, because in this time there was no name on the box. Yeah.
Do you remember that, Benjamin? I mean, as a family member, that your father was playing with some prototypes or something?
Absolutely. So that is one of the super nice things, being the kid of a board game developer, that he will come to you sometimes to ask you if you want to play something. So for Barbarossa, unfortunately, I was a bit young. I think I was 4 in 1988. So I saw them, playing around with DAU, and I was like, I want to join, and they were like, you're too young. And maybe that's the reason why Klaus started inventing kids games at some point. I don't know. But I could easily start playing together with them.
That's nice. Are games, in a sense, parallel worlds for gamers? I mean, when you create a game, when you have got a prototype there, are you imagining that you are in a parallel world?
What do you mean with parallel world? I know the words, but
like fiction. I mean, when I start to write a novel and I imagine my characters, I live with them, and they are not real. They are only my imagination. So, in a sense, I create a parallel world, a parallel reality, other reality or alternative. I mean, and I am afraid maybe a creative activity like building a game, creating a game is similar to that. Do you live it like that?
Yes, I think it's similar if you write a novel or if you develop a game, when the game has a story. Yeah, there are also abstract games, but when you develop a game on the ground of a story, then you also have a parallel world in that you live a time, yeah. And like Catan is a world where you live. You build an island, and you have. Sometimes I have the feeling that you are a game developer is also Regisseur.
Like a director?
Yeah, and you wrote Drehbuch, is the word.
Like a script?
the script, yeah, for theater or for a movie, and then come the people on the table, and they fill that script, yeah. And each game will be different to another game because there are other people, and so I made the experience that Barbarossa in some groups was very, very fine, and they like it and love it, and in other one, boring faces. Yeah, this could be very, very different. Yes, and also perhaps on a novel. Yeah, when you write a novel, people perhaps understand what you want to say and love it, and other people, yeah.
That's it. When you talk about scripts or theater, it's like gamers are the characters, in fact, that play or react what you have thought before for the game. But if I tell you both 5 cultural activities, like playing a board game for an evening, or reading a novel, or going to a theater, or watching a movie, a cinema at home, at Netflix, or listening some music broadcasted at home, or going to a concert, which would be your first option, Klaus?
Or when I have it's evening and I want to do anything of that. Yeah, okay, then it depends on my mood, I think, and on the situation. Sometimes I think I would like to look a movie or read a book. I do everything. I love everything, and I need the change. I cannot sit each evening reading a book or each evening. I think this is we have wonderful people. They made wonderful things for us, and I like it to change them. Yeah.
What about you, Benjamin?
Yeah, it's kind of boring, but I have to answer the same. It's I love doing everything of these, like go to a concert if there's no corona, of course. Watch movies, read books, and play games. It really is kind of like part of the mood. But what I often experience that when you start doing it and then you really get into it. So I was just playing with my wife and her family this weekend, and we started to play Crazy Words, and we really got into it and played like 1.5 hours nonstop. And all really enjoyed it, even though nobody knew the game and nobody felt really like, oh, should we really play or shouldn't we rather talk? But then once you start it and you have a nice round, it's a wonderful activity to do.
In fact, my question was a tricky one, because I pretended just to put at the same level to play and cinema, theater, literature, and playing board games. Of course, it's a cultural activity and people live like that. But maybe in Germany, this is quite clear. I don't know, maybe for your cultural environment, playing and board games are perceived as a cultural activity. Maybe in other places, maybe in other countries, it's not exactly like this. When in Germany start the authors to sign their games? I mean, when was that a first game was signed by an author, which is a cultural mark? Is it very long ago?
Yeah, I think there was a change when the name of the authors were shown on the boxes. And at this time, people recognized, okay, there are men or women behind a game, like behind a novel or something else. Yeah? And then it started that people want that I sign my games. It was the change was in the 80s and 90s. In Germany. Yeah, and there was a lot. We have in Germany the SAZ, These are authors, board game authors, and they want to help the game help the authors to save their rights, and also bring games more in the cultural status, because there are a luck in Germany too. Yeah.
I think the funny thing about that is that you were not to send Barbarossa to any company at first, because you didn't expect that there are board game authors, but that the company somehow does it. You didn't give it a second thought or something. But then, like, I think like Barbarossa and some other games in that time were the first ones who had the author on the box. Yeah. So I guess it was that time when it changed.
Mm-hmm. So it was on more or less when you started, if you say the 80s, the 90s, so you were the first generation of authors, more or less, of games or signing your creation.
I think the first one who did a lot for authors and also for the game is Alex Randolph. You know him, I think. He developed a bit Twixt, or in German Sagerland, a lot of games. And he has in this time much influence, much more than I had. And he was the one who brought Ravensburger to bring his name on the box.
Oh, I see. Another tricky question. Have you, both of you, read any classical books about islands like Thomas More, Utopia, or Robinson Crusoe, or Lord of the Flies, or any novels about islands? Which one?
Yes, I think we both. No?
Yeah.
I like these stories about islands to discover, and that's wonderful stories. This is also a movie. Benny, what was the name? TV show series with the island, the plane.
Like Lost.
Lost. Yeah. Islands are very inspiring. But I have read, I didn't know that, but it's translated into Spanish even, that a German historical fiction author called Rebecca Gablet has, I don't know if I pronounce her name well, has written a novel based on settlers of Catan. How did you feel about that? That came from a novel.
I asked her to do that. I have some imaginations about what happened with these first settlers when they settled on the island, and I met her on the Frankfurt book fair.
Book fair, yeah.
I think in 2002, and I liked her books very much. I read, and so I asked her on the fair. I met her and asked her, "Would you like to write a book about my first scribbles I made about what happens to Vikings, and they have to flee from their land and so on?" And so she did, yeah.
And then after that novel, there are more games like Candamere or Ellison. Do they come from the novel? Or I don't know if I have assumed it well.
Yeah, no, I think that these are like Candamere, which is which is a role-playing game, and this is the story in the game about a young man who lost everything on when they arrived Catan. And now he has to do some sorts of tasks, and to convince beers or and this is an aspect, only one aspect of a story, which is very allgemein,
broad, wide.
Broad, yeah. But the only connection to Rebecca's novel is the name Kandamir.
Just. Oh, okay. So it's an independent game, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. So we finally get into Catan, Die Siedler von Catan in 1995. How did you get the idea of mixing a game with an island? Why an island?
Yeah, in the beginning of the development, it were the Vikings who inspired me, because they are sailing not only on the coast, they're sailing over the ocean, and developed Iceland and Greenland and America, yeah, and found settlements on these new islands. And so my wish was to can experience a game where you settle an island, and it should be not should have no natives, because I want to make a game without war, without colonialism, without defeating them. Yeah. And Iceland was such a empty Iceland. Only some monks should have lived there, but there was no family, no people. And so then I want to have an island which is a fiction. And so I thought, okay, the Azores, when you have a circle around the Azores, you get a bigger island. And why not should the ocean, the Atlantic, have built more land on this place? And it's Catan. And it is uninhabited. And yeah, there could be some stories how the Catanians or the northern people come to this island.
Do you, Benjamin, remember that creation? Because you were not 4, but 7 years, 11 years old or so. You remember the process in the family creating Catan?
We actually, that was one of the games I could finally play as a prototype as well. So it was, it was kind of special. It felt special from beginning on, to be honest. I know that I liked having these resources on my hand, building stuff with it. It was, it felt very natural, very like archaic, the kind of like needs as a human being were spoken to. So even if I was young, I really liked playing it. I remember it well.
What about the name for us Catalan people? Catan, and Catalan is very, very close, so we love it, and it's very easy to pronounce. But I have read you got a list of some invented other names. Did you remember any of the discarded nouns?
No, the reason to have Catan in the title was a company in Germany who published a video game with the name Die Siedler, the Settlers.
The Settlers. Oh.
That happened in the time when we wanted to publish Catan. And in the first step, the name of the game was Die Siedler, only Die Siedler. That was the same name like the video game. And I thought, okay, that could evaluate problems later. And indeed, there were problems. So that they said, okay, when we made our first video Catan game, they forbid us to use the word settlers.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So our first Catan game, video Catan game, had the title Catan, only Catan. Like today, yeah. And before that, because I had problems with settlers for both games, and I made a list with a lot of names. Not a lot, but 7 or 8. Settlers, Siedler on Catan, Siedler, Ebora. I don't know. I forget his names because this. Yeah, I didn't know that Catan would have such a success later. Yeah, though it was only a list of development. But later I was very happy to have Catan in the title. Then today we have the games called only Catan. It makes no difference. It's a video game or an analog game, and so we had one name and no problems, property problems with this company.
And it's quite easy to pronounce for everybody with the vowel A, which is said to be the most powerful and appealing and easy to remember. So it's a very, very nice name. But I have read that it was released in the States just the 1 year after the German version in 1996. So it was this version, the English version, was the first translation for Catan.
Yeah, the first. Yeah, no, it was also published at this time in French.
In French.
In French and in the Netherlands, I think, 96. Yeah, because in the first time I handled this for myself with the companies. And later Cosmos did it. But I remember that France was the first country with America, also the United States together.
And the United States. Okay. So, and how many languages by now do you, Benjamin, do you know? The most recent report I could read said about over 30 different languages?
It's actually over 40 now.
Over 40 by now. And let's talk about, let's update some other figures. How many copies have it sold worldwide? I mean, the whole Catan phenomena.
So across all Catan games, like expansions included, it's more than 33 million.
33, okay. And about Catan-related products, when I read that there are a lot of Catan-related products, which sort of products? Other expansions, other games, or merchandising as well, you mean?
No, without merchandise and without digital version, just analog. Let's say like box games, you could say.
And how many of these related products right now? Different ones, I mean.
Different games of Catan. Do you mean expansions or spin-offs or what?
No, well, in fact, I had for De Vir, which is the publisher here in Barcelona, they have more than, at their catalog, more than 40 Catan-related products, as they say. Catan Cards, Catan Junior, Star Trek Catan, or Game of Thrones Catan.
Okay.
And 4 languages, Spanish, Catalan, Basque, and Portuguese as well. But I thought maybe there was a whole number for these diverse products.
Yeah, I can't count that. Sorry.
It's several dozens for sure. And already out of the program already, and we didn't really count it.
Anything, it doesn't matter about the numbers, but who decides to add an expansion or a special product or a new version? It's how is the process of making this new version? You think about it, or maybe some publisher says you could do that with Game of Thrones, for instance. How does it work?
Yeah, I think you can say something about licenses, something, and then we have also Catan games or other games without licenses. Perhaps the Inca Catan game, Rise of the Incas, and which I developed together with Benjamin. And this is it's not that we try to have a new game and now searching for themes or other. And so, but in kind of Inca, we read a wonderful story, article about this culture in South America and former cultures. The Incas were only the of a pure pyramid.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was a change of the cultures. Yeah, they rise and they decrease, and this was a very, very good fine theme. We thought to have that in a Catan world, which is a world of earning, harvesting, trading, and building.
And did you work together with this Inca version with Benjamin?
Yeah, and but we have also licenses, but Benny could tell something about.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that we always have the story in mind, like just what Klaus just said. Like it's not that we are approached that people say like, okay, now we need this version of the game. Can you make it because we want to sell more? Of course, sometimes we are approached with it, but if we don't have a good idea, we would not do a game or publish a game if we're just mediocrely happy with it. And Game of Thrones is a very interesting example because we were asked actually for a Game of Thrones license. So not Game of Thrones, not the movie one, but the literature one. And we said, well, we love the books, we love the movies and the series, but like it doesn't fit to the brand of Catan because it's like cutthroat and you have a death each episode. And in Catan we solve conflicts non-violently. So as much as we want to, we cannot. And then the idea came up actually that we said, oh, but underneath the gift there's this area where all the Catanians collectively fight off a threat from the north. So a little bit like Cities and Knights expansion, where you want to win and want to be the best Catanian, so to say, the best settler, but you're having a common enemy. And that worked wonderfully for Game of Thrones Catan, because then you had to guard the wall and fight them off, but still the most successful settler underneath the gift would become the next Lord Commander, which is the goal of the game. So once we discovered that, we were like, oh, this is amazing, because we love the brand Game of Thrones so much. So yeah, there we went.
But we declined to have a game with Star Wars. No? Star Wars doesn't fit. Star Trek, yes, but not Star Wars.
Star Wars, that didn't fit. And do you think Catan could have a legacy version?
That's nice.
Yeah, we have been trying to develop this really for many hours, months, eventually.
Years.
I love legacy games, and I really had. I mean, like you imagine it so well. Well, you come to the island, and you explore this, and then you continue, and like something new happens and stuff. So it really makes sense when you think about it first time. But then if you go deeper into it, and we really went deep, then actually Catan in its core is very cooperative already in many aspects. So you either make it a cooperative game or you make it a competitive one, but then competitively you need new setups every time. There are very many ifs. I could talk about this for hours now. So we kind of like put it on hold for a long time because we said we don't see an option right now. But within my mind in the back, there is still a little hope that maybe someday we'll have a nice version of it.
I see. In Catan, one player's success can benefit others, as we say. And if you simply form a monopoly on one resource, you'll never win. That's a very strong idea, since you have to have a combination of different elements to get anywhere on the island. Do you feel this idea, this philosophy, is realistic in real life? Or do you think this is an aim or wishful thinking? Do you think it can be applied to life?
Should I say something? Yeah. I think so. There are many. I think like developing a game enables you to send messages, just like an author. We realized, and we know it from playing games ourselves, that when you're like coming up with a finger and say like, we need to educate you here and there and learn this now, it's less fun in a game. So a good game, in our opinion, transports this moral, this knowledge, very subtle. And in Catan, one of them,
in the background.
Yeah, very subtle in the background. Yeah.
Right.
So in Catan, you kind of like have the trade and the cooperation as one element where we say you do benefit much more and much more long term if you have this cooperation with other players. So we had people who trade less, and then they just don't win as often, and they learn it through the game, and they're like, I need to open up a little bit. I need to trade cleverly. Also, like the social aspects of the game is very important. Of like complaining a little bit here and there, and being like, oh, now why don't you trade with me? Why do you trade with him? He's leading. So all these aspects are really important. So I would say it's a clear yes. Trading and behaving cooperatively really helps you in Catan, and it can be applied to life.
So it is in our times.
Yeah.
It's the contrary. So that was Trump does. Yeah. So I think in Catan you see the winners are the people who cooperate and not to cut connections.
Mm-hmm. I have read that some of the great fans of Catan are people, very eminent enterprises like Mark Zuckerberg or Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, all this generation of people. But would you recommend to play it more to some politicians, or to which ones?
We're kind of like with Catan, we try to never really honestly to transport anything religious or politically. So we're avoiding this in order to reach many people, and the reason is that we can reach more people through it. So we transport the message, and if the message is yes, trading benefits everyone and you create win-win situations, and if your question is that, then yes, I think in current days we see people getting more extreme, less cooperative, and we're like sad to actually experience that. So it's actually something that I would recommend to some politicians, to open up a little bit and learn that on the long term, not on the short, like maybe sometimes on the short term you do benefit more, of course. If you just take what you want, have it, then you have it. But the long term is what's important, and we strongly believe that these values are important. So yes, I would love to see, of course, that they like Reid Hoffman, as you mentioned, he seems to play Catan with the leading choices of people he hires for the company, because he knows all of them are good in what they do and have experience in what they do. But then the last little thing is like seeing them playing, and that is something. You learn more about the person in a good board game in an hour than maybe if you know them for a longer time.
Yeah, but we had some Catan games which are connected to an environment, or a better environment. Oil springs perhaps, and where you show that you have you in a field of interest for oil, but also of interest to save nature.
Oh, I see.
So the balance, and the other one is not crop trust. What was the
Crop trust? Yeah.
crop trust? Yeah. where you can save the seats, yeah, for the people in the Spitzberg, and on the board you try to save these seats, but you try also to win, and this is also a balance between those. Yeah.
Well, I would like to ask you, what does a regular player requires to win at Catan? Strategy, imagination, inventiveness? What do you think is the main quality to be successful in a Catan game?
I think the social part is the most important. Yeah. Okay, you know the rules, you know some tactics, you know some strategy, but when you bring your person into the game and you are lively and you trade and you have some comments about other gamers, so said, okay, he's leading and I got no resources all the time. Yeah, place the robber to him, not to me. Such things there, and they are very important to lead the game, yeah, and to decrease the luck factor of the dice.
The luck factor, okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your family, as we have you both here, because when you left Klaus, your dental lab in 1998, I have read that you decided to left it because you felt like Catan would fit your family finally, so you could concentrate on making games. How did you collaborate from then on? I mean, it's nice to play with a family, but when you are playing and working, you have to have your own roles. Maybe how is a normal way of collaborating since that 200 or 1999 on?
Yeah, I don't. I find it was a great luck for me that first my son Guido had interest to accompany me in the company. I remember when I was walking with him in the fields, and we talk about Catan, and then I said in 2002, I think, or 2001, okay, I need someone to help me. I'm alone; it's too much work, and the company's asking me for a contract, and I will have one. I need one, yeah. And then Guido said, okay, why not me? It was a wonderful moment, and it was a wonderful moment too when I think 10 years later, Benny, after his studies, also had interest to come into the company. Yeah, you can tell about that better, Benny.
How did you what did you study, Benjamin?
I studied psychology on a bachelor, and then European business master in London and Berlin, and actually had some work experiences that stories would fill hours, because there were some rare ones and really interesting and funny ones. But yeah, after having worked in other companies for a while, I realized that rather than working in a consultancy or selling something that I don't really believe in, I really wanted to do something with a purpose. And Catan is a purpose for me because the values are so good and important. And then working with a family, of course, you think about it maybe one time more than in another company, because of course you're close, but we already did get along very well, so I wasn't doubting this. And now that I worked 10 years in the company, I realize that that it actually made us even closer. So like we I think you need some rules, like you of course have sometimes dividing opinions, and then it's important that you treat each other with most respectful ways possible. And if you do that, then working together is wonderful, not just in the family, I guess like everywhere, of course. But for us, it's really, like a huge lucky thing, and I still enjoy very much working that way.
Yes.
I assume Guido is in the States for the English-speaking part of the game, and you are here at Europe for the other, the non-English language, or how do you divide these roles?
Actually, so I live in Frankfurt. In my first year, I told Klaus and Guido, hey, if I start working in the company, is it possible to be what actually nowadays is called a digital nomad? So I lived in Barcelona for a year and really loved the city. Like, and I told myself I'll do it at least for a year, and then I really liked it. It was a bit close for me to get in touch, really, because so many people come and then you make friendships and then they leave. So after a year, I was one of those who also left. But now I'm in Frankfurt, and I talk to Klaus every day, and I talk to Guido every night because we have 9 hours time difference. So you could actually say the Catan GmbH never sleeps. There's always one you can reach, which is a nice thing if you think about it. So actually the roles aren't absolutely strict and clear. It's we also have like a COO who is also a very good project manager, and we all kind of do everything. So we always keep saying reach one of us, and we'll kind of like ask between us who will do it mostly. But if you want to say it very generally, then Klaus is 100% developing, Guido is 100% project management, and I am currently, I think, 80 project management and 20 development, even though I would love to carve out some more time for development in the mid to long term.
And I think your wife, Claudia, is testing new games again with all the time. Is it so?
Yes. She accompanied me from the beginning, and she likes very much to play games, but she doesn't like to work in the game. So sometimes she says, "Okay, I want to play, not to work."
It's right.
And then she leaves our table because. So I think this was one reason that my games were successful, because I tried to reduce them to a core that are not so complicated, and you have then that you have the feeling, okay, I'm playing, I'm not working, just now.
Nice.
Yeah.
From that Barbarossa on, how many games have you created? How many games by Klaus Teuber?
I didn't count. I think what is an expansion, a game of Catan. My Seafarer has his own elements, sure, but it's has the base game. You need a base game, and City at Night had more ideas, but is it an own game for himself? And it's very difficult. I think with all the expansions and everything, there are more than 150 perhaps, and without expansions, then it's less than 100. Something like this.
Okay. Then I would like to talk about two main Catan universe visual concepts: hexagons and resources, these 5 resources. First of all, which is your favorite resource? Of brick, wool, or grain, or lumber?
The most games I lost were games when I had a lack of wheat.
Wheat.
I think wheat is the most important resource in the game. That's so in each new game I look for wheat income for that.
And why didn't you add animals? I mean, just mineral and vegetable things. Why not cattle, for instance?
Yeah, because the sheep were very important for the Vikings, and so I think that was a relict of the former stories I read, that I took sheep. But in the end, the sheep stands for other animals too. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Also, the wheat is the symbol for all food. Yeah, we can also say, okay, it's not wheat, it's food, and the sheep is animals. Yeah, house animals.
Okay, let's talk about hexagons. France is usually compared to an hexagon, but the most powerful country in the world, apart from China by now, has its power symbolized by the pentagon. Why did you make Catan Island with X pieces? Where did you take the idea of having hexagons?
Perhaps you know, I have on my website, I have some pictures, and I show, okay, the first prototype of Catan. In this prototype, I used squares, no hexagons. And I had in the middle of the squares, I have points of settlements. Yeah, there were 3 landscapes, and in the middle, also perhaps forest, wheat, and hills, and in the middle you have your settlement. And I realized, okay, when I put a lot of these squares fitting together, there are hexagons. Yeah, and because on my website there are pictures about that, and so it changed from squares to hexagons. It was because it was easier to build variable scenarios with hexagons. Yeah?
Nice. Let's talk about wheat, about grain. You say this is the most important resource to have
for me.
For you. But which is the most important thing for any game? Both of you, Benjamin, for instance, to be good for you from your point of view. Which the most important element that you say, that's great, I love it because of this? It's not an easy question.
Yeah, it's really tough to say. I don't know. I like to be, my personal preference is being very flexible in gameplay. So I always try to have my settlements a little bit apart from each other. I like to have a wider variety of resources. But then, and this is the grace of Catan, if the situation dictates that, there are like, and I saw this during a World Championship, there are 3 wheat hexes, 3 sheep ones, and the sheep harbor. And then, well, you use that extreme strategy of going to the sheep harbor and have the 3 hexes, and then maybe you win or not. So it's really tough to say that there is something that you always try to take care of, because it really depends on the very variable setup of the board game. There are rather few things that you should always not do. So I know that Klaus would say, never build the longest road at the beginning of the game. And of course he's right, because there's something that gives you no income, but you lose income, and you will have the next best space to build your next settlement, because that gives you more new resources, of course, to expand faster, and then the longest road is something you get towards the end. So there are rather a lot of things that you should try to avoid, and then whatever the luck of the variable setup gives you, you'll have to adapt very flexibly.
Yeah, I think you asked what is a good game. Really? Did I?
Yeah.
That's a very difficult question because there are a lot of games I love, and I think they're good. They're very different from each other. But I think, well, I believe that a good game needs a soul, and you feel that when you open the box, build up the material, and start. And then you see when it is a good game, you feel that there is a ghost coming out of the box, and this ghost brings everybody in the center of the game, and then the game, I think it's good when it have a soul.
I totally misunderstood the question, apparently.
Yeah.
What's the good strategy in Catan?
And I was trying to ask for a more general question about elements in a game, any game, but that's okay.
Well, you have two opinions, two different sides. That's very good.
Let's go by this way. If you had to vote for a top 5 or top 3 sort of Ludo canon of your essential games, which ones would you vote for apart from Catan? I mean, other games by other authors that you have played more, or you consider they are they have their own goals, their own essentiality.
Okay. When I started to play games when I was older, 25, something 20, 25, then the games which brought me to gaming were Risk. Risk were Acquire from Sid Saxon, Formula One from Wolfgang Kramer, and the second was, the fourth was McMulty. Yeah. And these games I played very, very often with friends and with my wife, and I think that was a time where I played the most games in my life.
We are talking about the 70s or the 80s?
I'm talking about 70s, 80s. Yeah.
And what about you, Benjamin? Talking about this century more recently, which are your favorite?
It's really it's tough to say. People ask us this question again and again, and each year I actually really say that I love a new game currently. I think some fallback options are obviously always Risk. I'm playing the Legacy Risk with my friends for years now because we rarely meet. But then my wife and I really started playing Decrypto with friends now, and really both like the game, but then not everybody likes it. So we try to push Decrypto to everybody who wants to play with it or who doesn't and has to learn it with us. I generally really like the games that the jury Spiel des Jahres in Germany votes for. I think they often have a good pick in presenting something new. And very generally spoken, it's tough for me to make a top 3 or top 5, but generally spoken, when I play privately, by now I very often play on the lighter side because in my circle of friends, not many play a lot, which is good, I guess. It's not all about gaming all day. But then sometimes when we go for a weekend of gaming or something, I also love the Civilization. That my longest game took like 14 hours. It's so like you really go deep. So yeah, all sorts of games.
That's good. Let's pass to Brick, a resource to build, the most constructive resource of Catan. It makes us think in Monopoly, a game to which Catan has frequently been compared. being a modern version or an evolution. As you know, the Washington Post hailed Catan as the monopoly of our times. Other places like Wire called the monopoly killer, which is nobody kills no one. Lots of games there. But what's your opinion about Monopoly? Have you played much, Klaus?
Yes, when I was 15, 14, and this time I played it with friends, and I liked it, but it was not a game which brought passion in my heart to play it, because sometimes it was very, very long. It took a long time until there was a winner, and sometimes there was one who lost in the early moments. So I like it much. I like it much, but it was not my favorite game at this time.
What
And
about,
later,
what about you, Benjamin?
It's tough to say. Like I haven't played a Monopoly till the end. I think because it sometimes takes very long, right? And then in the last 10 years or like 20 years, maybe I didn't really get to play, to be very honest. I downloaded the app, and I think each time has its game, and Monopoly certainly is like it's there for a reason, and it's popular for a reason. The Zeitgeist, as we say in German, like what's currently like in the mood, in the stream of many people's minds, is that Monopoly is very capitalistic, and also is no mercy. So like one player will take it all, and many say that after 1 hour, who will win in 6 hours. So that is what I don't like so much about it, but it's a good game, I think. There's a reason it's successful, of course.
But in this century, in this 21st century, there are some versions of Monopoly, for instance, tropical Monopoly with the perimeter, while the original Atlantic City has a volcanic tropical island in the center. And another you-build Monopoly replaces the rectangle properties with hexagon tiles that resemble Catan's terrain. My question is, do you feel like influencers?
I didn't know this game. Sorry.
Yeah, they are with this hexagon. Yeah.
Yeah, but Catan was not the first game with hexagons. I think hexagons are a part of, or a kind of pieces which you can use to more than one game. When nobody uses hexagons, I don't know if they have a side of view on Catan. Sorry, but it's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's it's called you-build Monopoly, released in the 2010, and it replaced this rectangle for hexagons. But that's an anecdote. But my question, my real deep question is: do you think games reflect the society in which they appear?
It wasn't my idea to do that when I developed Catan. It was my wish to experience a game of settlement and discovering, and that it meets the Zeitgeist, which is on, was coincident. It wasn't my goal, and I were lucky that people liked it very much.
But I think you could say, some people define, there are many descriptions or definitions for Euro games, and I think one of them is that you rather not solve it through conflict and war, which has been a style of the maybe like more like English US based war games or other games. But I think the Europeans, after the horrible World War II, learned that a peaceful solution is the better one, the best one. And maybe you could say that indirectly, yes, board games have been influenced by how people are in a culture. So I guess even if Klaus didn't actively invent Catan in the way that it is, maybe, or like surely he was of course influenced by the cultural surrounding in which we live. So I guess that games somehow do reflect a society.
Let's go to wool, to sheep. By now we are going to the end, but I have thought about this sheep, this wool, and board games are supposed to be more common in winter, so to speak, here in Barcelona at least. Or it's said sometimes that in northern societies people plays more plays more board games because the weather is bad, so they have to stay at home and they play with their friends and all that. Do you really think bad weather is a good ally, a good fellow for board games?
I think yes. Also, Corona was the reason that people played together more than before, and bad weather is a reason too. Yeah, okay, but also played a lot of games in the summer, sitting in the evening with a glass of wine outside on the terrace and playing games. It's wonderful. I think you need not bad weather to play.
But you called about Corona times, and real people has been more confined and at home playing more. How are you and your family living this situation by now? Do you travel less or do you play more? Maybe, or
Yeah, I think we are playing less
you play?
because yeah, we are very careful about the virus, and Guido Benny visits us, and but we, yeah, Mama, we.
We sit outside, and sometimes there is wind, and then the tiles would fly away. So we rather decide just to talk.
Okay. Let's go to this mineral thing. And
I'd like to add one thing actually, because the question was really interesting. When I lived in Barcelona,
yeah,
in 2010, and I told people I'm a board game developer and I work with board games, and then they would say, oh, like okay, por los niños. They all connected it more like to a children activity. And I realized that has changed. So now the weather hasn't changed so much. Well, we have climate change on top of everything, but yes, so the weather hasn't changed so much, but the culture has also changed. Like people more accept it as an adult's hobby, and something nice to do, also with 4 adults sitting on one table, not just kids. So I think, as Klaus said, maybe sometimes it's somehow dictated by things that make you stay in rather than go out. But then on top, of course, the culture must be set for board games. And we have seen it with Catan and many cultures and across nations, and very different ones, from South Korea, Japan, to Australia, to all the Spanish market, to, of course, like European markets, that once a culture starts and more people start playing, it becomes something which is woven into the cultural fabric.
Of course, that question about weather was about our prejudices. That now we are. I think it's a change of perception about games like a cultural matter. So this DAU festival is a festival which is the same than theater, music, or literature festival, and we start to talk about with authors. Game authors, which is a new thing, a very new thing in our environment. It's not like in Germany. But of course, we had the prejudice of, well, it's sunny, so we go outside and we'll play at winter when it rains, right? let's go to mineral. And I have read that Klaus, as a child, set up miniature fighters and ancient Romans on the floor. He played with little creating mountains and rivers, and children play with and without rules. That's clear. Children play with everything. But my question is, do you imagine a board game without rules, with no rules, or rules are the essence of a game?
Yeah. When you mean a board game, you need rules. Yeah. When you mean games, when people or children play on the street, role-playing games, or they hide or they run, I think this is a free gaming. Yeah. Both are games, but a board game needs rules.
I would say people with bad tongue, many say that Germans prefer games in which the more rules, the better. We need rules to have fun. I guess it's not necessarily true, and it's of course stereotyped. I agree with Klaus very much. You need rules, of course, because you need some sort of like guidelines in a board game, how it's played. You can, of course, do whatever you want to, but then you will get a lot of fight. So having some rules is necessary and good, unless the game itself offers some variations in which rules are not needed. And one great example, what we really love playing, it would be among my top 5 maybe at this point, is it's called Stille Post Extrem in German. And Stille Post means I whisper something in your ear, you give it on to the next one, and then to the next one. And that's the same system, just with painting stuff. And then the next one guesses, and then that person paints and guesses paint. And it's just fun. And I've never played it with points or something. Like, there's never a winner, but everybody has just great fun of how ridiculous things are painted and guessed. So I guess it depends on the group and what the group wants.
Mm-hmm. Talking about painting, which is your favorite color when you start a game and there are diverse colors, green and yellow or red? Do you have?
Yeah, until Benny was 7, my favorite color was yellow.
Yellow. And
then he said one time, okay, I want to have yellow. It's my favorite. Since then, I play with blue.
So
yeah, I still can't remember this, but if he says so, and I think the question is answered then, so yellow is mine now.
That's great. How many board games do you have at home? How many?
Benny, you are the master of cellar.
That was one of my first job titles. Yeah. I don't know. We have a huge room, and to be honest, we have more games than the room can carry. So we always give a lot of games. We must give a lot of games away because the space wouldn't be enough. At home, my wife said, okay, the IKEA shelf, and I have 8 of those spaces, of these rectangular ones, that I may fill with board games. And the rest is in the basement or somewhere. So like it's tough to count. I never really counted, to be honest.
Yeah. I have a lot of my former games when I was younger or when I was a young adult, and I would never give them away. And then I have games also I edited with Cosmos together, because we had a group of people, TM. We were 5 friends and we worked for Cosmos. And also I have a lot of these games. And then we have, I think, each year we buy the 10 best games, new games, which we think are the best. But sometimes we have, perhaps only one game in a year will stay in our cellar because we have no place.
Mhm. But the trouble is that with books, normally everything is quite the same. You've got diverse measures, but board games are all different sizes, so it's
Yeah.
very difficult to put them all together. But do you find them, or do you index them? Do you know where to have it?
No,
No.
I think in our cellar were 200, 300 games, perhaps. And we have in our mind where they are. But I have also,
We know roughly here are translations of Catan, here are the private board games, here are those that we worked with editorially but didn't publish ourselves. So we roughly know, and then a little chaos helps to keep the mind fresh.
Okay. Let's go to Lambert and finishing it. I've watched a documentary called Growing Cardboard about the board game industry. And I watch, it includes a footage of Klaus appearing at a great convention, gaming convention, and playing with all people playing Catan. You are a gamer, you both are gamers and game builders, in fact. Which is your relationship with game fans or gamers, with players? Do you usually go to those big gaming meetings?
yeah, we visit Essen, the Spiel in Essen each year. And there we have contact to fans, sure, and we know some of them very, very well. And then we also have on the other side a 5-day meeting with people who love to play, not only Catan, every new game on the year. And I visited 1994, I think. Benny, as a child, also accompanied us, and I like that very much to have to meet these people each day, each year again, but not now in the Corona times.
Of course. But Benny or Benjamin, do you? He is not going to say, but I think he must be famous in those environments. How do people approach Klaus when they recognize him in Essen or any place? Do they want him to sign the games?
Actually, we have like an autograph, like a signature hour, or in the Essen game fairs, for example. I think what I really like about Klaus is that he is so approachable, and he never really changed despite Catan and all that. And that is something that I personally look up to very much, that I like very much. And I think when people see him and see how it is, then sometimes they come with this kind of like, oh my God, this is Klaus Teuber feeling, but then they realize he's just still like a regular man who stayed on the floor, kind of like. So it's nice to see these encounters during the fair, and hopefully we get those encounters soon again when the Corona crisis is gone.
Of course. My last questions would be about these electronic. Catan is such a phenomenon that there are even electronic versions to play. What's your opinion about playing online? I mean, not on a board, but on a screen with a computer? Or do you think this is another kind of sport, so to say, or another genre?
Yeah, you must divide between board games digital and other games digital. I think someone who likes board games or loves board games has not a time to meet with other people. It's too late. They have no, But then it's wonderful to have a digital Catan game or board game. Yeah, you can play with the people you know, perhaps, or people you will know. Though we had in our former Catan online world, we had cities, virtual cities, which are real to the real cities. Means that when I come to the programmer, he knows, okay, I come from Frankfurt, and then I can play with other people from Frankfurt. And the people now made events, analog events, and they want to see the people in reality. And so board games on the digital way brought people also together. Yeah, so it's a kind of substitution, not more. Yeah.
But video games are another sort of thing.
Video games are not?
Another sport or another games are related.
Yeah, board games, digital board games are another kind of. There are so much. There's a big range of video games. You cannot compare them with each other.
Okay. We have just received this book, but and hopefully we can't, not even Uriol, not me, can read in German. So we are waiting eagerly to the English version, or maybe hopefully someday a Catalan version or a Spanish version. But lots of photographs here with these prototypes, and it's very nice, but it's very recent, is it?
The book was just published this year.
This year in German.
Yeah.
And
at the end of the year,
coming now
in English.
Is it an autobiographical word? I mean, what's here? Your biography, your stories? What's that?
No, I think it's only the part of my life which is connected with Catan. Yeah.
Oh.
It's not my whole life. Only what brought me to Catan, and it starts in my childhood, because of my education and my interest in geography and in history. And there were many people I met. They were very important for me to become a game author and not a doctor, which was my idea. And I think so. It's not a real autobiography. Biography. It's more my way to Catan and my experiences on this way.
And the title would be in English, My Life, no?
I think in German means My Way to Catan.
My Way.
In English, there were another title, no?
I say My Journey, because it's a long-term travel experience, kind of like.
Okay. So, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations. We hopefully meet someday here in Barcelona. As Benjamin knows, it's a very sunny city and very amiable city. We would like very much to find that DAU festival someday, but this year, this special and strange year, we'll make this festival thank you to technology. So I am very glad to have the opportunity to talk with both of you, and as a guest author at DAU's festival, I congratulate. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. All the best with DAU.